after more than a decade of openly stating his intentions to kill his neighbors, along with multiple psychiatric hospitalizations. 35-year-old diagnosed schizophrenic Fritz Schnoor was arrested for attacking Joseph and Cynthia Giambalvo at their home in Arroyo Grande, California. He broke into the elderly couple's home and stabbed the victims. Killing 74-year-old Cynthia, then went to another neighbor's house and sat on a curb until police arrived. Several years before the murders, which took place in September of 2025, the Giambalvos had obtained an order of protection against Schnoor. The order was extended 4 times, but it ultimately failed to protect the victims from their stalker. Years earlier in 2011, Schnoor had violated an order of protection that had been issued against him for threatening to kill a 19-year-old woman named Jade Jackson. Shortly after his release from prison, he violated the order by sending a Facebook friend request to Jackson's sister. Jackson applied to renew the order in 2014 but was unable to get it extended because she didn't know Schnoor's address. Following the Giambalvos murders, Schnoor was booked into the San Luis Obispo County Jail, where he remains held without bail amid the ongoing case. Number 32. Crystal Denmon. On Monday, November 25th, 2024, police in Lakewood, Colorado, received an alarming video of a man who said his ex-girlfriend had been holding him captive for 4 hours. In the footage, he could be heard telling the woman to leave several times, but she refused because she didn't want him to call the police. Law enforcement recognized the woman as 26-year-old Crystal Starr Denmon, but by the time they arrived at the address provided by the 911 caller, she had shot her ex in the chest and kidnapped his young son, Uriah Say Jr. An Amber Alert was issued and Denmon was arrested that afternoon after being spotted in Otero County. The child was safely reunited with his family and the gunshot victim reportedly survived. During his conversations with police, he described Denmon as a stalker. At the time of the kidnapping, Denmon was banned from contacting the man via a protective order that had been issued after she allegedly threatened his girlfriend. Denmon was booked into the Jefferson County Jail, where she remains held without bond on charges of first-degree kidnapping, first-degree burglary, menacing with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, violating a protective order, and robbery. Number 31. Andrew Moore Luckhurst. In early May of 2023, law enforcement in Harrison County, Mississippi, responded to a reported medical emergency at an apartment in Gulfport, where they found 62-year-old Becky Andres dead with fresh blunt force injuries and signs of strangulation. Also at the scene was the victim's ex-boyfriend, 44-year-old Andrew Moore Luckhurst of Eustis, Florida, whom Andres had taken an order of protection out against months earlier. Luckhurst has a lengthy criminal record, including past allegations of violence against women. In August of 2022, he was charged with battery for beating Andres, who filed for the order of protection shortly thereafter. Police noted seeing older bruises on Andres' face from a previous incident, and both fights had reportedly involved alcohol. Andres had recently moved to Mississippi when she was killed. Luckhurst was arrested at the scene on suspicion of first-degree murder and appears to still be in pre-trial detention at the Harrison County Jail, although updates on the case have not been forthcoming. Number 30. George McDonald Jr. In late September of 2020, 19-year-old Lizzie Garrow was found dead near an underpass in Canastota, New York, 4 days after being last seen at a Dunkin' Donuts restaurant about a half-mile away. Roughly 15 feet from her body, police found a kitchen knife that had been used to stab her 19 times. Just weeks earlier, Garrow had filed a police complaint against her husband, 24-year-old George McDonald Jr., following a domestic violence incident. While receiving treatment at the hospital after the alleged attack, Garrow discovered that she was pregnant. McDonald was arrested following the domestic dispute but was quickly released due to New York State's bail reform laws. The court issued an order of protection banning him from contacting or going near Garrow, but it didn't stop him from killing her. In August of 2021, McDonald pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a prison sentence of 20 years to life. During his sentencing hearing, he apologized for his actions but claimed that the court was unaware of the full story surrounding the circumstances that led to Garrow's death. McDonald went on to accuse law enforcement of planting evidence and claimed that Garrow attacked him first by pulling a knife on him, but the judge was quick to shut him down, stating, "Make no mistake, it wasn't the system that failed you. It wasn't Lizzie. It wasn't your parents. You failed yourself. You failed your family." Number 29. Devin Johnson. In late March of 2025, a judge in Lee County, Florida, granted a protection order to 69-year-old Rosemary Johnson against her 28-year-old son, Devin, following two separate domestic incidents. On one of those occasions, Rosemary accused Devin of hitting her in the head and stranding her in a power recliner by shutting off power to their Cape Coral home and throwing her mobility walker out of her reach. Devin then took his mother's car keys and left the residence in her vehicle. During another incident, Devin allegedly spat on Rosemary's face and held her down while attempting to steal her phone. In her petition for the protective order, Rosemary wrote that her son suffered from unmedicated schizophrenia and was unable to work due to his mental illness. She had grown so fearful of being in her own residence that she was staying with her adult daughter. The protective order failed to keep Devin away from his mother, however, and in September of 2025, Rosemary was found stabbed to death inside her home. Devin fled the property covered in blood and was captured in neighboring Collier County after fighting with deputies and repeatedly punching a police canine. He's facing a second-degree murder charge in Lee County and is currently in custody at the Collier County Jail, where he faces additional charges of fleeing or eluding, resisting an officer with violence, 2 counts of battery, animal cruelty, and more. Number 28. Candido Raul Rubio-Perez. After more than 20 years of marriage, 52-year-old Niurka Alphonso Acevedo separated from her husband, 54-year-old Candido Raul Rubio-Perez, in late 2024. Her decision to kick Perez out of their Nashville home came after he beat her on Christmas Day, causing her to nearly lose an eye. Perez left in accordance with Alfonso's wishes, but he continued to contact his estranged wife multiple times daily in an attempt to persuade her to reconcile. The repeated calls became so alarming that Alfonso began checking in with a friend regularly to ensure her safety. One of these check-ins happened over the phone one morning in April of 2025, while Alfonso headed to her job as a school custodian. During the conversation, the friend overheard a tense confrontation with Alfonso pleading with a man not to hurt her. Concerned for her well-being, Alfonso's friend called another close friend, Jorge Felix, who headed to the woman's workplace and found her stabbed to death in the parking lot. Investigators quickly became suspicious of Perez, who they believed was lying in wait outside the school, knowing that Alfonso was usually the first person to arrive there for the day. According to the victim's friends and family, she was in the process of pursuing an order of protection against Perez when she was killed. Several days after her death, U.S. Marshals apprehended Perez at an apartment in Nashville and booked him into custody at the Davidson County Detention Center, where he remains held on a criminal homicide charge. Number 27. Michael Gleason Jr. Shortly before 10 a.m. on July 6th of 2025, officers in Berlin, New Hampshire, responded to a report of gunshots at a local restaurant. Upon arriving at the business, they found one of the employees, 25-year-old Sandra Marisol Fuentes Huracha, dead behind the bar, and her estranged partner, 50-year-old Michael Gleason Jr., deceased in the restroom. Gleason had shot Fuentes multiple times, bringing a tragic end to a string of crimes he had committed against her in the months leading up to the murder. In April, 3 months prior to the shooting, Gleason had been charged with assault, domestic violence, kidnapping, and theft for allegedly attacking and robbing Fuentes. He was released after posting $5,000 bail and a protective order was issued. Just 4 days before Fuentes was killed, another woman filed a stalking order against Gleason, accusing him of multiple assaults. He nevertheless continued to walk free despite the troubling allegations he faced. Within days of the murder, officials with the Attorney General's office called for a closer look into how the slaying could have been prevented. More specifically, a committee was asked to analyze the decisions that led to Gleason being released on cash bail. In August, the committee announced that there had been sufficient evidence to detain Gleason without bail after he was first arrested for assaulting Fuentes, and that there was ample reason to believe that Fuentes was in danger when she filed for her order of protection against her ex. State leaders are now calling for reform and more accountability for those who handle these types of investigations in hopes of preventing similar tragedies in the future. Number 26. Sebastian Mabb. 25-year-old Brianna Craig's life came to an untimely end in February of 2024 when she was found strangled to death at her apartment in Saratoga Springs, New York. Suspicion quickly fell on her ex-boyfriend, 31-year-old Sebastian Mabb, whom she had an order of protection against at the time of her murder due to past domestic violence issues. Craig and Mabb lived within walking distance of one another, and according to the victim's mother, Mabb had a history of arrest for assault, harassment, and strangulation. When questioned by police, Mabb told several different stories, including that he pushed Craig, causing her to hit her head, and that she was still alive when he left. He also claimed that Craig had attacked him and, at one point, said that he had blacked out. Following Craig's death, Mabb was charged with second-degree murder, along with 1 count of aggravated criminal contempt for violating Craig's order of protection. In July of 2024, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for the contempt charge being dropped. He initially faced 25 years to life, but was sentenced to 23 years to life as part of the plea agreement. The deal was struck despite Mabb's failure to take accountability for his actions, despite admitting to several people that he wanted Craig dead so that his current wife could adopt their child. During his sentencing hearing, he read a handwritten speech about how he hasn't been able to sleep since Craig's death while acting like the crime had been committed by someone else. The judge overseeing the case was quick to shut down Mabb's narrative, describing it as the most disingenuous version of events he had ever heard. Number 25. James Leggett. When 24-year-old Michaela Carter filed for an order of protection against her ex-boyfriend, 29-year-old James Leggett, in July of 2021, she was hoping to avoid further instances of abuse. She accused Leggett of beating her with a whiskey bottle, resulted in his arrest for aggravated assault. The order was granted, but the charges against Leggett were dropped just 2 weeks later, and the unwanted contact continued. In November of that year, Carter showed Nashville Metro police officers threatening messages she had received from Leggett in violation of the order. Despite the evidence, law enforcement said they didn't have enough evidence to charge Leggett. After the cops left, Leggett showed up at Carter's home and kicked down the door. Carter called 911, but by the time emergency responders arrived, Leggett had shot her in the chest and leg. She died from her injuries a week later, while her stepfather survived 3 gunshot wounds. Leggett was charged with 10 felonies relating to Carter's death, including first-degree murder and gun charges. At the time of his arrest, he was on a suspended 10-year sentence for a previous robbery case. He was sent back to prison to finish the remainder of his prior sentence while awaiting trial, but he died behind bars during the summer of 2024 before the case could be resolved. Authorities have not revealed his cause of death. Number 24. Mario Dewayne Green. 53-year-old Mario Dewayne Green was banned from Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Michigan due to his history of stalking and harassing his ex-wife on the job. But he was undeterred by this rule, according to police, who identified Green as the gunman who entered the hospital late at night in August of 2025 and fatally shot 40-year-old Latricia Green Brown in her office. Sources familiar with the case told 7 News Detroit that Green claimed he was at the hospital to drop off some of Brown's belongings. Brown told him to leave, but he refused, and the ensuing argument escalated into the deadly violence that claimed Brown's life. Green fled the scene in a Dodge Charger and was apprehended the following day along with the accused getaway driver, 54-year-old Anthony Lee Lamont Barnett. Prosecutors have charged Green with first-degree premeditated murder, aggravated stalking, discharge of a firearm in a building causing death, possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, and 4 counts of felony firearm. Number 23. Walter Balkum. On August 27th, 2025, police responded to a late-night call at a Rochester, New York home, where they found the deceased body of 43-year-old Malika Bruner. The emergency call came from Bruner's child, who had seen their mother being beaten to death. By the time officers arrived, the killer had fled the scene. Investigators soon narrowed their focus on Bruner's boyfriend, 50-year-old Walter Balkum, who was arrested 5 days later on suspicion of manslaughter and criminal contempt. Balkum reportedly has 2 prior felony convictions on his record. He was also facing charges for assaulting Bruner 2 months prior to her death. After the incident, Balkum had been placed on a GPS ankle monitor, but the judge removed it 5 days before Bruner's death so he could find work. The judge also issued an order of protection banning Balkum from contacting or going near Brunner, which was in effect at the time of the murder. In April of 2025, a jury found Balkum guilty of first-degree manslaughter, aggravated criminal contempt, and 2 counts of second-degree assault. He was sentenced in July to 17 years to life in prison for the manslaughter charge, along with concurrent terms of 17 years to life for aggravated criminal contempt and 15 years to life for the assault counts. During the sentencing hearing, Balkum apologized to Brunner's family but did not take responsibility for causing her death. He's reportedly facing an additional felony assault charge for beating a fellow inmate at the Monroe County Jail, which he has pleaded not guilty to. Number 22. Paul Varnado. Shortly before 10 a.m. on August 3, 2025, a 54-year-old Louisiana man named Paul Varnado fatally shot his girlfriend, 54-year-old real estate agent Alana Singleton, at her home in East Baton Rouge Parish. They were both found dead at the scene. In the months leading up to Singleton's murder, the victim had sought 2 orders of protection against Varnado. The first was issued in March and dismissed in mid-May, while the second protective order was issued in late June, following Varnado's arrest for domestic abuse battery. According to records, Varnado had pushed Singleton down a flight of stairs after he accused her of taking his car keys and cell phone, causing the victim to bleed and leaving her with significant bruising. He was released the following day after the protective order was issued, and it was still in effect when Singleton was killed. But as the saying goes, a piece of paper isn't going to stop someone who's determined to get to their victim, and Varnado had continued to contact Singleton despite the order. Number 21. Barry Garza. During the summer of 2023, 40-year-old Amber Jo Thomas was gunned down in broad daylight outside the assisted living facility where she worked in Saline, Michigan. She was on a break and walking toward her car when authorities say she was ambushed by her ex-boyfriend, 58-year-old Barry Lee Garza, at around 11:30 a.m. Just days earlier, Thomas had obtained an order of protection against Garza, who she accused of threatening to kill her on multiple occasions. The order had not yet been served when Garza decided to make good on his word. After shooting Thomas and the 67-year-old bystander, Garza fled the scene in a Ford Focus and purposely crashed into another vehicle. In the meantime, both gunshot victims were rushed to the hospital, where Thomas died from a bullet wound to the neck. While being taken into custody, Garza was heard admitting that he had shot Thomas and saying that he wasn't sorry for it. He pleaded not guilty to open murder, assault with the intent to murder, and felony firearm, and was denied bond. The case appears to be ongoing, with records showing that Garza remains in custody at the Washtenaw County Jail. Number 20. Ryan Edwards. In February of 2023, Teen Mom star Mackenzie Standifer decided to call it quits with her husband of 6 years, Ryan Edwards. The decision came on the heels of Edwards' arrest in Hamilton County, Tennessee, earlier that month for harassment, violating an order of protection, and possession of a controlled substance and drug paraphernalia. In her petition for a protective order, Standifer accused Edwards of physically abusing her, punching holes in the walls, threatening her with a pocket knife, smashing her phone, and taking her car keys to prevent her from leaving. She also highlighted Edwards' history of substance abuse and claimed that he had joined a motorcycle gang. The following month, Edwards was arrested again for allegedly stalking Standifer and a second order of protection violation. But it finally seems like the volatile situation has reached a resolution. And in August of 2025, news reports announced that their divorce has been finalized. The former couple have agreed to a custody arrangement for their 2 children, who will live primarily with Standifer while staying with Edwards part-time, and the court will reconvene in February of 2026 to determine whether the agreement should continue. Number 19. DeKoven Williams. 28-year-old DeKoven Malik Williams was already facing domestic violence charges and had recently gotten out of jail when he was arrested for murder in October of 2024. Williams is accused of fatally shooting 28-year-old Nathan Littleton in Tuscumbia, Alabama, who was found dead with multiple bullet wounds. Just a month earlier, the suspect had been arrested in Lauderdale County for strangling a woman who had a protective order against him while she was in bed. Authorities charged Williams with domestic violence, strangulation or suffocation, interference with an emergency domestic violence call, and violation of a protective order, and he was freed from jail 10 days later after posting bond. He was indicted in that case in December of 2024 and is expected to go to trial for Littleton's murder in October of this year. In the meantime, Williams remains held without bond at the Morgan County Jail. Number 18. Jeremy Hewlett. On August 4th of 2025, an intruder broke into the Berkeley County, South Carolina home of 38-year-old Angel Capers and shot her dead in cold blood. Her murder came after she spent months reporting her accused killer, 39-year-old Jeremy Hewlett, to the authorities for stalking her relentlessly. Capers obtained an order of protection against Hewlett in June. After being released from jail for an unrelated case in mid-July, Hewlett was accused of violating the order by contacting Capers. In another incident, Capers accused Hewlett of approaching her car as she pulled into her workplace parking lot, beating the windshield, and then chasing her with his vehicle and trying to run her off the road. She managed to pull into a parking lot where her attacker blocked her car in and smashed her driver's side window with a baseball bat. Authorities issued an arrest warrant against Hewlett for malicious damage, stalking, and violation of a protection order. Just hours after law enforcement called him and informed him of the warrant, Capers was found dead in her home. Hewlett is currently awaiting a bond hearing from behind bars at the Berkeley County Jail, where he's being held on suspicion of murder, attempted murder, stalking, 2 counts of violating an order of protection, burglary, kidnapping, weapons charges, and more. Number 17. Michael Lee. 22-year-old Jacob Ford was fatally gunned down in downtown Spokane, Washington, during the summer of 2021 by the father of his girlfriend's child. He was pronounced dead at the scene shortly after 11:30 p.m. by emergency responders. In the meantime, police chased after and eventually captured the suspect, 25-year-old Michael Lee, who had repeatedly threatened Ford in the months leading up to the shooting. The victim had started receiving threatening messages from Lee in January of 2021, shortly after he began dating Lee's ex. In the messages, Lee indicated that he had a gun and planned to kill Ford. In February of 2021, Lee was arrested for slashing his ex's hand and trying to stab his romantic rival. The judge issued an order of protection and scheduled a trial for September of that year. But Lee remained fixated on harming Ford, and the proceedings were delayed due to the murder case. In August of 2022, Lee pleaded guilty to charges in connection with both cases, including first-degree murder, criminal mischief, and a gun charge. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison with a mandatory minimum of 20 years to be served in custody, followed by 3 years of community supervision. Number 16. Brooks Dean Dew. While responding to a reported shooting in Bull Shoals, Arkansas, in April of 2025, officers found 48-year-old Anita Suzanne Dew in her car with a gunshot wound to the head. She died from her injuries at a nearby hospital, and a manhunt was launched in search of her estranged husband, 49-year-old Brooks Dean Dew. According to court documents, Anita and Brooks had separated 2 months earlier. Based on news reports, it appears as though Brooks was arrested for assaulting Anita just days before she was killed. A probable cause affidavit states that Anita took her car to the suspect for repairs, and he demanded to see her phone. Brooks then brandished the gun, threatened to kill Anita while refusing to let her leave, and choked her unconscious. He finally let her go hours later after she convinced him that she wouldn't go to law enforcement. At the time of Anita's murder, she had an order of protection against Brooks, who was already facing charges of second-degree domestic battery, first-degree false imprisonment, aggravated assault on a family or household member, and terroristic threatening for the previous incident. While searching for Brooks, police overheard gunshots from inside a vehicle and found him dead in the car, bringing the tragic case to an unceremonious end. Number 15. Constantin Beldie. When an off-duty Chicago police officer witnessed a woman being stabbed in broad daylight in the suburb of Portage Park last November, he attempted to intervene and eventually opened fire on the suspect, who was later identified as 57-year-old Constantin Beldie. Despite the cops' efforts, he was unable to save the victim, 54-year-old Lacrimoira Beldie, who was Constantin's wife. Constantin fled the scene in a minivan but only made it about a block before he died from his gunshot wounds. Members of the public were outraged when they learned about Beldie's domestic violence history, which included pending charges for a previous attack on his wife that had occurred just a month earlier. In that case, Constantin was accused of approaching Lacramoira in an alleyway, beating her, throwing her to the ground and dragging her into his vehicle. Prosecutors had urged the judge to detain Constantin after the previous attack, but the court released him on GPS monitoring instead. The monitor showed that he had left his exclusion zone on the day of Lacramoira's murder, but the violation was not reported in time to spare the victim's life. In light of the arguably avoidable tragedy, the judge who had released Beldie was reassigned to traffic court, and officials are reportedly working to improve their handling of domestic violence cases and order of protection violations. Number 14. Willie Banks. 40-year-old Alicia Cole was on the phone with a 911 dispatcher when her stalker, convicted felon Willie Banks, shot her to death inside her Joliet, Illinois home in December of 2023. She had called for help after Banks forced his way into the residence and could be heard saying, "I'm dead," after multiple gunshots went off. In the months prior to her death, Cole had taken out 2 orders of protection against Banks, who was on electronic monitoring at the time of the murder. He was required to wear the GPS device following his arrest months earlier for forcing Cole to eat cat food and threatening to kill her family while cornering her in her bedroom. And while Cole had withdrawn her protective orders against Banks, he was nevertheless banned from having any contact with her as a condition of his bail. On the day of the murder, responding officers found Banks in Cole's living room. The home's windows were shattered and the suspects reportedly admitted to killing the victim. In July of 2025, a jury found Banks guilty of first-degree murder. He's currently awaiting sentencing, which is scheduled for October 7th. Number 13. Pierre French. 33-year-old mother of 6, Drianna Booker, and her estranged husband, 36-year-old Pierre James French, were just a month away from finalizing their divorce when Booker was stabbed to death inside her Elgin, Illinois home in December of 2024, shortly after discovering the woman's body at around 1:00 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Police arrested French on suspicion of first-degree murder. While authorities have revealed limited details about the case, court documents state that Booker had filed for an emergency protective order against French 5 months prior to her death. Records show that French remains held without bond at the Kane County Jail as he awaits trial. Number 12. Alphonso Hamilton. 47-year-old Jennifer Hamilton was in the middle of a video conference call with her doctor when she was shot dead in her vehicle outside Chicago's Brickyard Mall in April of 2022. Later identified by police as Jennifer's estranged husband, 50-year-old Alphonso Hamilton. The gunman approached the victim and pumped 5 bullets into her head and body, leaving no confusion about his intention to end her life. The couple were in the process of separating after Alfonso's arrest for a previous domestic violence incident earlier that month. He has a lengthy history of domestic abuse, including 4 domestic assault convictions from cases dating back between 2001 and 2008, and a judge had granted Jennifer an emergency order of protection just days before she was killed. Alphonso fled the scene of the shooting in his vehicle but turned himself in at a police station just minutes later at his mother's urging. He confessed to shooting Jennifer after she admitted that she was seeing someone else and was booked into the Cook County Jail, where he remains held without bond on suspicion of murder more than 3 years after the crime. His next court hearing is scheduled for October 6th. Number 11. Duncan Allen Robinson Jr. 29-year-old realtor and mother of 2, Taylor McFadden Robinson, was found dead in her Florence, South Carolina home in January of 2022, following her failed attempt to get a restraining order against her estranged husband, Duncan Allen Robinson Jr. She had been shot in the head just weeks ahead of a scheduled divorce hearing, sparking outrage within the community about her inability to obtain a protective order. In the aftermath of Taylor's death, South Carolina lawmakers called for a new law which would make it easier for certain courts to grant emergency protective orders. In the meantime, Duncan was charged with his wife's murder, along with 1 count each of first-degree burglary and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. In late 2024, Robinson pleaded guilty as charged in exchange for 2 life sentences for the murder and burglary charges plus 5 years for the gun charge. He took the deal shortly before his trial was scheduled to begin, sparing his children from having to testify against their father after losing both their parents due to his crimes. Number 10. Jose Alvarez. After enduring years of alleged abuse at her husband's hands, 48-year-old Karina Gonzalez obtained an order of protection against 67-year-old Jose Alvarez during the summer of 2023. Despite his history of mistreatment and substance abuse, Alvarez managed to persuade his wife into letting him move back in with her and their 2 kids, and perhaps not surprisingly, the abusive behavior quickly started back up. Just days after the protective order was issued, Alvarez shot Karina, the couple's teenage daughter, Daniela, and their 18-year-old son at the family's home in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood. Karina and Daniela died from their injuries, while the teenage boy was able to escape and run for help after being shot in the ankle. According to reports, the incident unfolded after Alvarez started accusing Karina of cheating on him. Karina went into the living room and sat with Daniela on the sofa while her son threatened to call the police. Moments later, Alvarez entered the room and opened fire on the victims. Alvarez was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count each of attempted first-degree murder and aggravated battery. His case appears to be ongoing. In the meantime, Illinois lawmakers have passed new legislation which will require police to act more urgently when confiscating guns against accused abusers after an order of protection is issued. Number 9. Matthew Moore. Second-grade school teacher Amy Moore was in the final stages of divorcing her estranged husband, Matthew, when they were both found shot to death at her home in Normal, Illinois, in May of 2024. The tragedy followed a lengthy string of criminal allegations that have been levied against Matthew throughout the former couple's separation and divorce. Amy obtained her first of multiple protective orders against Matthew in July of 2022. It was lifted the following month and a second order was reimposed less than a week later following Matthew's arrest for vandalizing Amy's car. Amy accused Matthew of continuously harassing her, threatening her, and making erratic social media posts among other harmful behaviors. He also tried to convince he and Amy's children that their mother was mentally ill despite being the one who was ordered to undergo an evaluation after one of his arrests. During the nearly 2-year period between the original protective order being issued and Amy's death, both parties repeatedly attended court hearings to apply for, contest, or withdraw orders of protection. At one point, the Moores attempted to reconcile, but Matthew's erratic behavior escalated and the arrests continued, sealing Amy's decision to end the marriage for good. Unfortunately, she paid for it with her life, and the tragedy remains shrouded in controversy over the apparent lack of legal intervention that some say led to Amy's death. Number 8. Dale Howard. In March of 2024, 27-year-old Elisa Vollen obtained a no-contact order of protection against her boyfriend, 25-year-old Dale Howard. 10 days later, police responded to Howard's apartment in Duluth, Minnesota, and found him wailing under a blanket while clutching Vollen's lifeless and visibly injured body. The young woman was obviously dead and had likely been killed hours earlier, with neighbors recalling that they had overheard a woman crying before sunrise. Howard claimed that he didn't know what had happened to Vollen and insisted that he had nothing to do with her death. He also denied assaulting her days earlier, which had led to the order of protection being issued. But investigators noticed inconsistencies in his story, and he was charged with Vollen's murder. In September of 2024, Howard pleaded guilty to second-degree murder while committing domestic assault by strangulation. While standard sentencing guidelines call for a 12-year sentence, the plea agreement came with a 20-year prison term due to Howard's violation of the no-contact protective order. Number 7. Gene Birdsong. Gene Birdsong has never admitted to murdering his wife, 40-year-old Tabitha Birdsong, despite having previously been convicted of domestic battery and charged with violating a protective order that she had taken out against him. The order of protection was in Tabitha's back pocket when she was found, bludgeoned and stabbed to death in Kansas City, Missouri, in November of 2018, indicating that she wanted to keep it handy. Gene immediately became a suspect when police noticed his name on the order, and suspicions against him were heightened after investigators learned that he and Tabitha had been seen together just hours before her body was found. Despite the evidence pointing toward Gene's guilt, he maintained his innocence. He was nevertheless convicted of first-degree murder and armed criminal action following a jury trial in February of 2023 and is currently serving a life sentence. Gene is now arguing that he was wrongfully convicted as he appeals his case with the support of his family. In his attempts to clear his name, he has accused prosecutors, the judge, and others of misleading jurors, representing him inaccurately and denying him of his rights. But the case has been slow going, with no upcoming hearing dates listed on the state's court schedule or appeals docket. Number 6. Andrei Kisliak. While performing a welfare check at a Buffalo Grove, Illinois residence in late 2022, officers found 5 people stabbed to death. Police made the discovery after receiving a call from a concerned co-worker of one of the victims, who are identified as 67-year-old Lilia Kisliak, 39-year-old Andrei Kisliak, his wife, 36-year-old Vera Kisliak, and the couple's 2 young children, Vivian and Amelia. Court records reveal that Vera Kisliak had filed for divorce and petitioned for an order of protection against Andrei. In the documents, she accused Andrei of violent tendencies and access to guns. She also wrote that Andrei had threatened to kill and disfigure her, and at one point had hidden their kids from her. Just months prior to the massacre, Andrei had been arrested for violating Vera's order of protection by entering the house while she was there. He was released after posting 10% of a $5,000 bond, or just $500, and Vera eventually had the protective order lifted against the court's advice. During a subsequent hearing, the judge had complimented Andrei on his apparent willingness to co-parent despite his past irrational behavior, leading many who knew the family to later feel like the system had failed Vera. Number 5. Timothy Hayden. By the time Timothy Hayden murdered his wife, Tracy Fogarty, in 1990, he already had more than 35 prior arrests under his belt, including for domestic violence incidents involving the victim. Tracy had an active order of protection against Timothy when he stabbed her to death at a pub in Belleville, Illinois, 7 weeks after she filed for divorce. He was eventually found guilty of Tracy's murder and served half of a 55-year prison sentence before being released in early 2018. Just a year later, in January of 2019, Hayden was arrested for violating his parole. Court records show that 2 women had filed for orders of protection against him following his release from prison, and he was accused of violating the protective orders while having numerous run-ins with law enforcement for other reasons. Hayden was sent back to prison to finish his parole period behind bars, but was released just a year later. But his legal troubles continued, and in September of 2025, he was sentenced to 5 years behind bars for being a felon in possession of a weapon. He was given credit for over a year of time served and is only required to serve half his term in custody, which means he could see freedom again in the relatively near future. Number 4. Jermaine Agee. In October of 2019, 38-year-old Mayra Garcia applied for an order of protection against her ex-boyfriend, Jermaine Agee, in Antioch, Tennessee. In the application, she detailed extensive abuse that she had suffered at the hands of Agee, who had a lengthy criminal history and a history of mental illness. The order was granted, but it had not yet been served when Garcia and her teenage son, Jaden Taylor, were found stabbed to death in their home just days later. Agee had entered the residence through a back door and attacked the victims, killing Garcia and Taylor and injuring Garcia's teenage daughter. He was charged for the murders, which family and friends said could have been prevented if their warnings about him had been properly heeded. In October of 2020, Agee pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life without parole, but records state that he's serving a 60-year prison term with an end date in the year 2078, effectively amounting to a de facto life sentence. Number 3. Shane Walker. 36-year-old U.S. Airman Shane Walker was banned from entering the Fort Hamilton military base in Brooklyn, New York, following his arrest in December of 2018 for attacking his girlfriend, 36-year-old Alla Orshava, who was also an active member of the American Air Force. He was also barred from going near he and Orshava's young children, Ella and Ivan, but he managed to enter the base and leave a daycare center with the children just a handful of months later, in June of 2019. The following day, Walker intentionally set fire to Orshava's home, knowing that she and the kids were inside. By the time help arrived, all 3 victims were dead. Police arrested Walker on suspicion of murder, manslaughter, arson, and criminal possession of a weapon, and in September of 2023 he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of second-degree murder. He tried to take back his admission during his sentencing hearing the following month, but failed to garner sympathy from the judge, who imposed a 40-year prison term. Today's topic was requested by Nikki123BXD. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Chris Lopez. In January of 2020, the ex-boyfriend of Teen Mom 2 star Kaylin Lowry was arrested in Delaware for violating a protective order that had been issued the previous year. Chris Lopez, who was 25 years old at the time and is the father of 2 of Lowry's children, had been arrested twice in October of 2019, including once for violating the same protective order. Lopez was initially detained after being charged with criminal contempt of a domestic violence protective order. He was released from jail later that day after posting a $5,000 bond. But his legal problems didn't end there, and 5 years later the former couple's drama seems to be alive and well. In January of 2025, Lopez posted a series of Instagram stories claiming that Lowry had taken out another protective order against him and filed to reduce his time with their sons in family court. He accused his ex, who is now engaged to another man, of trying to throw out Christmas gifts he bought for their children and of manipulating the family court system in her favor. Lopez admitted that Lowry was justified in taking an order of protection out against him in 2019. But this time he claimed that Lowry had no evidence to justify the protective order and that she had participated in the ongoing harassment between the two. The current status of the controversial former couple's case is unclear. Number 1. Lequintin Ford. 28-year-old Victoria St. Hilaire was fatally gunned down by her stalker ex-boyfriend outside a Burlington, North Carolina medical clinic on a Monday morning in November of 2019. The killer, 33-year-old Lequintin Ford, was on an ankle monitor at the time of the shooting and had already repeatedly violated an order of protection banning him from contacting or going near the victim. In the 2 years leading up to her death, St. Hilaire had made dozens of phone calls to the police about unwanted contact from Ford, whom she had ended her abusive relationship with after dating for more than 6 years. Officers were dispatched to the woman's home 30 times for trespassing and other complaints involving Ford, who was reportedly seen lurking near the residence on multiple occasions. He was already facing various charges for previous incidents at the time of St. Hilaire's murder, including for his latest protective order violation. Ford was never held fully accountable for his actions, however, because he was found dead shortly after he killed St. Hilaire, with the glaringly obvious red flags that were present before the crime causing her loved ones to wonder why more wasn't done to protect the victim. Thanks for watching. If you could ban one person from your life permanently, who would it be and why? Let us know in the comments section below.